Hey, welcome. Today we're going to break down the science behind a legit breakthrough in supplementation. It's a really cool story about nanotechnology, how our cells work, and the hunt for solid proof. All right, first things first, I've got a question for you. If you had to pick the single most important molecule in your entire body, what would you say? You're probably thinking oxygen, maybe water, right? But what if I told you there's this other molecule, and experts are basically calling it the key to fighting off the diseases we all worry about most? Well, that molecule is glutathione, and there's a good reason it's called the master antioxidant. I mean, besides water, it's the most plentiful molecule we have. It's absolutely vital for life. Think about it. Every single one of our 37 trillion cells makes this stuff, and it's involved in more than 400 critical jobs, from supercharging your immune system to putting out the fire of inflammation. So, here's the game plan for how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll tackle the main problem, what we're calling the glutathione dilemma. Then we'll look at why our cells are such tough gatekeepers. That leads us to an incredible nanotechnology breakthrough, followed by the big moment of proof, and finally, what it all means for you and me in the real world. All right, let's jump right in with the glutathione dilemma. I want you to picture your body's supply of glutathione. Think of it like a big swimming pool. When you're young, that pool is crystal clear and filled right to the top. But as we start to get older, that pool starts to spring a leak. So get this, on average, we lose somewhere between 8 and 15% of our natural glutathione every single decade. So by the time you're 40, you might already be down 30%. By the time you're 60, you could be working with half of what you had. This drop is a big deal because it weakens our body's #1 protector, basically opening the door for all kinds of health problems. Now, the obvious thought is, okay, simple, I'll just take a supplement to top off the pool. But, it's just not that easy. For decades, the real challenge wasn't getting glutathione into your stomach. It was getting it into your cells, where it can actually do its job. See, the real problem was never about intake. It has always been about uptake. And that brings us right to the heart of the issue, the cellular gatekeeper. Just imagine your cell membrane is like the world's toughest bouncer at the door of an exclusive club. It's designed to be super picky about who gets in to keep all the bad stuff out. And that, right there, is a huge problem for most supplements. To really get how huge this problem is, we have to think super, super small. Okay, a single strand of your hair. It's about 80,000 nanometers thick. A cell is way smaller, around 100 nanometers. But the actual door, the little pore that lets things in, it's a tiny 10 nanometers. That is like trying to thread a needle with a rope. It's an incredibly tiny doorway. And this slide just lays it all out, right? Traditional supplements, even the expensive ones, try to solve this by wrapping the glutathione in fat. It's called a liposome. But here's the problem. That makes the whole particle up to 250 nanometers wide, which is way, way too big for that 10 nanometer door. It's literally like trying to park a bus in a spot reserved for a bicycle. It's just not going to happen. The goal was always to get a tiny pure molecule that could just slip right through. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting, and it brings us to a huge breakthrough in nanotechnology. A company called Numi came at this problem from a totally different angle with a technology they call hydrostat. So how does this thing actually work? Well, instead of using big fat molecules, hydrostat technology wraps the glutathione in these tiny clusters of ultra-pure water, and this process shrinks the particle down to between 2 and 5 nanometers. That is so small, it can just sail right through the cell's front door without any trouble at all. This is a process called passive diffusion, which basically means the cell doesn't have to lift a finger to let it in. Now, out in the real world, this technology was making some serious waves. We saw amazing results with athletes, with competition horses. I mean, we heard from thousands of people all over the world. But you know how it is. There were still experts on the sidelines, arms crossed, saying, "That's nice, but show me the lab results. Show me the hard data that proves it's getting inside the cell." And that's, my friends, leads us to the moment of truth. You see, with all that skepticism, the company knew they had to put their money where their mouth was. It was time to put the science to the ultimate test in an independent, third-party lab. I love this quote from co-founder Ryan Scott because it shows you exactly what they were thinking. It was about proving the doubters wrong, for sure, but it was also about giving their people something undeniable, proof, black and white, something they could stand behind with total confidence. And you can imagine, right, even when you know your stuff works, there's still that nail-biting moment. It's like you've studied for the final exam. You know the material inside and out, but you're still sitting there, holding your breath, just hoping you passed. A lot was riding on those results.
And then the results came in, and they were staggering. The lab put 3 different types of glutathione to the test: a standard, off-the-shelf product, a fancy engineered one made for IVs, and the NUMI hydrostat formula. And look at this. The standard stuff, no significant uptake. The IV version, same thing, no significant uptake. And the NUMI hydrostat formulation, significant uptake. It was the only one that actually got inside the cell.
But here's the kicker. How fast did it work? The lab took its very first reading just 5 minutes after introducing the formula to the cells. And at that very first measurement, boom, it was already inside the cells, in full force and ready to get to work. Incredible. So, now that we have that rock-solid proof from the lab, we can finally connect the dots and look at what this all really means. What's the real-world impact? How does this go from a lab to your life? What's really fascinating is that the technology seems to be, well, smart. It appears that the cells that are the most depleted in glutathione, the ones that are most stressed out, are the ones that soak it up the fastest. It's like a tiny medic rushing straight to the cells that are screaming for help the loudest. And this brings all that science back to real life, to stories like this. A 48-year-old cyclist in this brutal 8-hour, 82-mile mountain race. He takes the product just 5 minutes before the start, and then every hour. Now, this guy knew that normally, after an hour, he'd hit a wall, hard. But this time, nothing. He kept his power up for all 8 hours, finished second against a bunch of younger guys, and then went home and did chores. He didn't collapse. That right there, that's what immediate cellular absorption looks like in the real world. And it's this kind of breakthrough that gets actual cellular scientists like Dr. Sotirios Nikolopoulos genuinely excited. I mean, as he says, our cells have these incredibly strong restrictions. So to create a technology that just bypasses all that by simply letting the molecule drift inside, in his words, it's genius. So let's circle all the way back. Think about that leaky swimming pool, or better yet, think of it like a bank account. The reality is, as we get older, most of us are operating at a deficit. We're overdrawn on our glutathione account, and that can cause all sorts of problems. But what this science shows, what these lab tests prove, is that we finally have a way to make a daily deposit. A real one, to consistently fill that account back up, right at the cellular level. So the question left for you is, now that you can invest in your health from the ground up, what are you going to build?